There are things a young girl should never have to endure from her own brother, but I endured them. And today, at 72 years old, after decades of keeping this secret buried deep in my soul, I've finally found the courage to tell how my own brother became my worst tormentor, and how a brave teacher saved me when I thought there was no hope left. Good afternoon, my dears. My name is Leah Newman, but everyone here calls me Miss Leah or Grandma Lily. I was born in March 1952 in a small town in rural Georgia called Oakwood, where the sun beat down mercilessly and everyone knew everyone else's business going back to their great-grandparents. It was one of those towns where the farmers' market happened only on Saturdays, where the evening soap operas stopped all movement on the streets, and where any bit of news became the talk of the town for weeks. I was always a family girl, raised with old-fashioned values, where we respected our elders without question, and where an older brother had almost the same authority as parents. My family was simple, but full of love. At least that's what I thought, before everything fell apart. My father, John Newman, was a hardworking man who ran a small auto repair shop downtown. His hands were always stained with grease, but his heart was the cleanest I've ever known. He'd come home tired, but always with a smile on his face and some funny story about customers to tell at dinner. My mother, Mary, was an elementary school teacher at the local public school, a sweet, patient woman who dedicated her entire life to educating the town's children and caring for our family. She taught me my first letters, told me bedtime stories, and always said I would become someone important in life if I studied hard. My brother Marcus was 6 years older than me. Born in 1946, he was a boy who from an early age showed himself to be intelligent and responsible. Daddy always said Marcus would be the man of the house when he was gone, that I should always respect and obey him like a second father. When I was born, Marcus was already 6 years old and treated me like a living doll. He protected me on the street when other boys picked on me, helped me with school assignments, and always made sure I didn't get hurt while playing. He was a caring, protective brother that any girl would want to have. Our house was small but cozy, with 3 bedrooms, a living room that served multiple purposes, and a kitchen where Mama prepared the most delicious meals in the world. In the backyard, Daddy had built a swing hanging from the oak tree, where I spent hours playing and dreaming about the future. We lived a simple but happy life. Daddy worked hard at the shop, Mama taught classes, and still found time to take care of the house and children. Marcus was an exemplary student, always top of his class, and I followed in his footsteps trying to be a good student too. On Sundays, we all went to service at the Baptist church, then visited our maternal grandparents who lived in a small house on the other side of town. Grandpa Anthony was a man of few words but very affectionate, and Grandma Connie always had some special treat saved for Marcus and me. Life followed its quiet rhythm. Marcus grew up and became a young man admired by everyone in town. He was intelligent, well-mannered, helped Daddy at the shop, and everyone said he would be a successful man. I was growing up too, a cheerful 15-year-old girl who dreamed of becoming a teacher like Mama. It was 1967. I was in my freshman year of high school, studying at the same school where Mama taught. Marcus, at 21, had finished high school and was helping Daddy at the shop, with plans to get married soon to his girlfriend, a pretty girl named Rose. Everything seemed perfect in our family. Daddy was doing well with the shop, Mama was respected by the entire school community, Marcus was the pride of the family, and I was the pampered youngest child whom everyone protected and loved. Folks, tell me in the comments what city you're watching this old woman remember her story from. And if you're enjoying it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It gives me strength to continue sharing these difficult memories with you all. It was on a Friday in August 1967 that my life changed forever. I remember it like it was yesterday because it was the day before Daddy's birthday, and Mama had left school early to buy ingredients for the cake she was going to make on Saturday. They had gone together to Atlanta to pick up a part for the shop and take advantage of the trip to do some special shopping. I was at home studying for a math test, and Marcus had arrived from the shop with a strange expression, different from usual. He seemed nervous, agitated, as if something was bothering him. "Leah, I need to talk to you," he said, entering my room without knocking. Go ahead, Marcus. What is it? It's about our parents, about what's going to happen to our family. I stopped writing and looked at him without understanding. What do you mean? Did something happen? He sat on the edge of my bed with a serious expression I had never seen before. Leah, our parents are aging. Dad has already passed 50, Mom too. One day, they won't be here anymore. Marcus, what kind of strange conversation is this? They're fine, thank God. They are now, but you need to understand something important. He moved closer to me. When they're gone, I'll be the one taking care of you. I'll be the one making decisions for you. You'll have to obey me like you obey them. I found that conversation odd, but didn't give it much importance. Marcus had always been protective of me, so I thought it was just another one of his big brother quirks. Okay, Marcus. But why are you talking about this now? Because you're growing up, becoming a young lady, and you need to learn from now on what your place is in the family. His voice changed, became harder. You can't do whatever you want anymore. You have to learn to respect the authority of the man of the house. Something in the way he spoke made me uncomfortable. But Daddy is the man of the house. Dad is getting old, Leah. Soon I'll be the one in charge here. And you'll obey me, whether you want to or not. It was the first time in my life I felt afraid of my own brother. There was something different about him, something I couldn't understand. But at that moment, I heard the sound of Daddy's car arriving, and Marcus left my room as if nothing had happened. In the days that followed, I noticed that Marcus was indeed different with me. He started giving me orders as if he were my father, questioning my friendships, complaining about the way I dressed. When I complained, he said he was preparing me for life, that a girl my age needed discipline. Mom and Dad didn't notice anything because Marcus was smart. In front of them, he continued to be the perfect son, loving and respectful. With me, when we were alone, he showed a face I had never seen before. In September 1967, the unthinkable happened. Dad and Mom had gone to Atlanta to resolve some issues with the shop's paperwork and wouldn't return until the next day. It was the first time I had been left alone in the house with Marcus for an entire night. During dinner, he was strange, saying little, looking at me in a way that made me nervous. After we finished eating, he said I had to wash the dishes and clean the kitchen by myself. Marcus, we always split these chores. Not anymore. From today on, you'll do the housework. It's a woman's obligation. But Mom always said that men and women have to share responsibilities. Mom is wrong. He slammed his hand on the table hard. Women serve men, and that's final. You'll do what I tell you. I was so frightened that I obeyed without questioning. I washed the dishes trembling, not understanding what was happening to my brother. When I finished, he was waiting for me in the living room. Now, you're going to learn another important thing, he said, getting up from his chair. You're going to learn to treat me with the respect I deserve. That's when he gave me the first slap. It wasn't hard, but it was enough to shock me. My own brother, who had always protected me, had hit me. Marcus, why did you do that? Because you disrespected me. Because you questioned my authority. He grabbed my arm, squeezing hard. And if you disrespect me again, you'll get hit again. I ran to my room crying, locked the door, and spent the entire night awake, not understanding what had happened. The next day, when Dad and Mom returned, Marcus went back to being the loving brother he always was, as if nothing had happened. But I knew that something had changed forever that night. My protective brother had transformed into someone else, and I was beginning to discover what kind of person that was. It was just the beginning of the hell my life would become. Because in those following months, Marcus gradually showed his true face, and I discovered that the brother I loved and respected had never really existed. The following months were a slow and calculated torture. Marcus had discovered that our parents trusted him so much that they never questioned his attitudes toward me. To them, he continued to be the exemplary son, the protective brother who looked after my well-being. But when we were alone, he transformed into a cruel stranger I didn't recognize. The first thing he did was establish rules for me. I could no longer leave the house without his permission. I could no longer have friends over. I could no longer wear dresses he considered provocative. And gradually, any clothing that wasn't completely covered became provocative in his mind. Leah, you're becoming a young lady. he would say with that fake, concerned brother voice when our parents were nearby. I need to take care of your reputation, protect you from the malicious boys in town. Dad and Mom thought his care for me was wonderful. What a blessed brother you have, my daughter, Mom would say. Marcus is right. A 15-year-old girl really does need protection. But Marcus's protection was a disguised hell. When we were alone, he controlled me as if I were his property. If I was 5 minutes late coming home from a friend's house, I would arrive to find him waiting at the door with an angry face. Where were you? Who were you talking to? What did you talk about? The questions came like a hailstorm, and I had to answer everything in minute detail. If he thought I was lying, or if he didn't like an answer, the punishment came. The punishment started small. No dessert at dinner, not being allowed to listen to the radio at night, having to wash the dishes alone for a week. But gradually, they escalated to more humiliating and painful things. The first serious physical punishment happened in October 1967. I had arrived 10 minutes late from school because I had stayed to help the teacher organize some books. A simple thing, normal, that any girl would do. But for Marcus, it was reason enough for a punishment I will never forget. 10 minutes late, he said, looking at the wall clock. 10 minutes that you left me worried, thinking something had happened to you. Marcus, I was just helping Mrs. Francis with the books in the library. Liar! He shouted so loudly that it scared me. You were talking to some boy, acting like a flirt. I wasn't. I swear to God I wasn't. Don't take the Lord's name in vain. He came toward me with a face I had never seen before. You're going to learn not to lie to me. That's when he gave me the first real beating. These weren't little slaps or pushes. They were punches to my arm, hair-pulling, pinches that left purple marks on my skin. I cried and begged him to stop, but he seemed possessed by an anger he couldn't control. Stop, Marcus! Stop! You're hurting me! I'm educating you. You need to learn to respect me. When he finally stopped, I was on the living room floor, with my arm hurting and tears streaming down my face. He bent down to my level and held my chin firmly. If you tell this to our parents, you'll get beaten twice as hard. Understand? I just nodded my head, trembling with fear and pain. At that moment, I understood that my brother had become my enemy, and I was completely alone in that fight. In the days that followed, I had to invent excuses for the bruises. I said I had fallen off my bike, that I had hit my arm on the door, that I had tripped on the stairs. Dad and Mom believed everything because they would never imagine that Marcus was capable of hurting me. The worst of all was his personality change. During the day, when our parents were home, he went back to being the loving Marcus I had known since childhood. He would joke with me, help me with school assignments, defend me when Dad got angry about some mischief. But as soon as we were alone, the monster would return. Did you like the beating you got yesterday? He would ask with a cruel smile on his face. Because if you don't behave properly, there will be more. It was like living with two different people in the same body. The public Marcus, whom everyone admired, and the private Marcus, who was turning me into a haunted and fearful girl. In November, he invented a new way to torture me. He started searching through my things when I wasn't home, reading my diary, going through my drawers, checking my school notebooks, looking for notes from boys or anything he could use against me. One day, he found a letter that my friend Connie had given me at school. It was a silly, teenage letter where she told me she liked a boy in the class and wanted to know if I thought he liked her too. Normal stuff between 15-year-old friends. But to Marcus, that letter was proof that I was going astray, becoming a frivolous girl who only thought about dating. When I got home from school that day, he was waiting for me in the living room with the letter in his hand. "What is this?" he asked, waving the paper in front of me. My heart froze. "It's a letter from Connie. A letter talking about boys. You two are at school talking about boys instead of studying. Marcus, it's nothing serious. It's just friend stuff." Friend stuff? He tore the letter into little pieces in front of me. "It's slut stuff, that's what it is." The word hit me like a slap in the face. My own brother had called me a slut because of an innocent letter from a friend. "You're not going to talk to this Connie anymore," he ordered. "And I don't want you receiving letters from anyone anymore. If I find out you're exchanging notes with anyone, you'll see what's good for you." From that day on, I lost the right to privacy. Marcus ransacked my room every week, read all my notebooks, checked the pockets of my clothes. I felt like a prisoner in my own home. At school, I started isolating myself from friends. I could no longer participate in conversations about boys, could no longer receive notes, could no longer do anything that could be interpreted as frivolous behavior. The girls in my class started to think I was strange, and gradually I became alone. "Leah is different," I heard Connie commenting to another classmate. "She seems to always be worried about something." It was true. I lived worried. Worried about not arriving home late. Worried about not saying anything that could irritate Marcus. Worried about hiding the marks he left on my body. Worried about maintaining the facade that we were a happy family. Christmas 1967 was torture. We had the traditional dinner at home, with grandparents and some uncles and aunts. Everyone praised how Marcus was a dedicated brother, how well he took care of me. If they only knew that the day before he had locked me in my room for 2 hours because I had been delayed at the pharmacy. "Marcus is an example of a brother," Uncle Severino would say. "Leah is lucky to have someone who looks after her so much." I smiled and agreed because I had no choice. But inside, I was screaming for help. I wanted to tell someone what was happening, but who would believe me? Marcus was perfect in everyone's eyes. I would be seen as an ungrateful girl who was making up lies about her exemplary brother. In January 1968, things got even worse. Marcus started controlling even what I ate. If he thought I was too fat, he would forbid me from eating dessert. If he thought I was too thin, he would force me to have seconds even when I wasn't hungry. "Men like beautiful women," he would say, looking me up and down as if I were an animal at the market. "You need to maintain your figure if you want to find a decent husband someday." The irony was that he wouldn't even let me talk to boys, but he was always talking about the future husband I should attract. It was as if I existed only to serve men. First him, then the husband he would choose for me. His fits of rage became more frequent and more violent. Anything served as an excuse: a poorly washed dish, a low grade at school, a 5-minute delay at the bakery, and always, it was followed by the same threat. "If you tell anyone, it will be worse for you. Nobody will believe you anyway. Everyone knows I'm an exemplary brother." And he was right. Marcus had built such a solid reputation in town that it would be impossible to convince anyone that he was capable of mistreating me. To everyone, he was the responsible young man who took care of his little sister with love and dedication. In February 1968, something happened that changed everything. Marcus announced that he was going to marry Rose in June. At first, I thought it would be my salvation. With a wife to take care of, he would leave me alone. But I soon discovered I was wrong. "After I get married," he said during one of our private conversations, "you will continue to obey me. Rose will understand that I am the man of the family and that you have to respect me. If you try to take advantage of her presence to challenge me, you'll see what's good for you." I realized that marriage wouldn't free me from him. On the contrary, it would give me one more person to deceive, one more witness to the perfect brother facade that he performed every day. It was at this time that I started thinking about running away. I dreamed of taking the bus to Atlanta and never coming back. But it was 1968. I was only 16 years old. I had no money. I didn't know anyone in the city. A girl alone in a big city would be easy prey for all kinds of danger. So I continued enduring, day after day, hoping that some miracle would happen, hoping that someone would notice my suffering and help me get out of that hell. But the miracle took a long time to arrive. And meanwhile, Marcus was becoming increasingly bold, increasingly cruel, as if testing how far he could go without anyone suspecting. The worst was yet to come. Because in March 1968, he crossed a line that I never thought possible to cross. That's when I discovered that my brother wasn't just an abuser. He was a monster. It was on a night in March 1968 that my life turned into the most complete nightmare. Dad and Mom had gone to a funeral in the neighboring town and wouldn't return until the next day. I was in my room studying for an English test when I heard Marcus coming up the stairs with heavy steps. He entered my room without knocking, something that had become routine since he started mistreating me. But this time, there was something different about him. His eyes were strange, as if he had been drinking, although I knew he didn't drink. "Leah, I need to talk to you about something very important." I closed my notebook, already prepared for another session of humiliations and absurd rules. "What is it, Marcus?" "You're becoming a young lady, and you need to learn certain things about how to behave with men." Something in his voice left me frozen. It was a voice I had never heard before, low and strange, as if it came from someone else. "I don't understand." "You will understand." He closed the bedroom door and turned the key. "Today you're going to learn to be a real woman." My heart started beating so hard I thought it would come out of my mouth. I got up from the chair, trying to reach the door, but he blocked my path. "Marcus, open that door. I don't like this game." "It's not a game, Leah. It's education." He held my arm tightly, squeezing so hard it left a mark. "You need to learn how to please a man, how to be a good wife in the future." That's when I understood what was happening. Terror took over my entire body. My legs began to tremble, and for the first time in my life, I felt I was going to die of fear. "No, Marcus, don't do this to me. I'm your sister." Exactly for that reason, he pushed me toward the bed with a strength I didn't know he had. "Because I'm your brother is why I have the right to teach you. Who else is going to do it? Some punk on the street?" I tried to scream, but he covered my mouth with his hand. It was a rough hand that smelled of grease from the shop, and it was trembling as much as my voice. "If you scream, it will be worse for you afterward. And remember that our parents aren't here. No one will hear you." At that moment, something died inside me. It wasn't just the innocence of a 16-year-old girl. It was trust, faith in family, the belief that I was safe in my own home. Everything shattered in a single night. What happened in that room was the most terrible thing one human being can do to another. Marcus not only destroyed my body, but also my soul, my ability to trust, my will to live. He violated me in a way I didn't even know existed, forced me into horrible things that a sister should never experience with a brother. When he finished, I was broken inside, like a vase that fell to the floor and shattered into 1,000 pieces. "Now you know how things work," he said, getting dressed as if nothing had happened. "And if you tell this to anyone, I'll say you provoked me. Who do you think they'll believe? Me, the responsible brother, or you, a hysterical girl?" I lay on the bed, unable to move, as he left the room whistling. It was as if my body no longer belonged to me, as if I were floating outside it, observing from afar what was left of the girl I once was. I spent the entire night awake, crying silently, feeling pains I didn't know existed. Pains in the body, pains in the soul, pains that seemed like they would never pass. When the sun rose, I remained lying down, without the strength to get up, without the will to face the world. But I had to get up, because our parents would return in the late afternoon, and I needed to pretend everything was normal. I needed to play the role of the happy and protected little sister, while inside, I was dead. I took a shower that lasted almost an hour, trying to clean myself of a dirt that wouldn't come off with just water and soap. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a different person. It was the same face, but the eyes were empty, lifeless, like the eyes of a wounded animal. Marcus came down for breakfast as if it were any ordinary day. He greeted me normally, asked if I had slept well, commented on the weather. It was the most terrifying normality I had ever witnessed. "Leah, you look pale," he said with false concern. "Aren't you feeling well?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell the truth. I wanted him to be arrested and rot in jail, but the words wouldn't come out of my throat. It was as if my voice had been stolen along with everything else. "I'm fine," I muttered, looking at the empty plate. "Are you sure? Do you want me to call Mom when she gets here?" The irony of the situation was so cruel, it was almost funny. The same man who had destroyed me the night before was now concerned about my health. It was as if he had two completely separate personalities, and I never knew which one was talking to me. When our parents arrived, I had to put on the greatest performance of my life. Smile, talk, pretend I had spent a quiet night studying. Mom noticed I was too quiet, but attributed it to school fatigue. "My daughter, you've been studying too much. Sometimes it's good to relax a little too." If she only knew what kind of relaxation her eldest son had given me the night before. The following days were psychological torture. Marcus acted as if nothing had happened, but I could see in his eyes a cruel satisfaction, as if he knew exactly the damage he had caused in my life. Worse still, he started giving me advice about relationships, always with that false tone of a concerned brother. Leah, when you date, remember to always respect your boyfriend. Men don't like women who resist displays of affection. Each word was like a knife to the heart. He was constantly reminding me of what he had done, enjoying my suffering, savoring every moment of pain he caused. At school, I could no longer concentrate on classes. I would stare into space, reliving that terrible night, wondering if I would ever be able to forget. The teachers noticed my change in behavior, but I always made up excuses. I have a headache, I would say when someone asked why I was so quiet. I didn't sleep well, I would respond when questioned about my lack of attention. Lies upon lies, building a wall between me and the world, isolating me more and more in my own pain. The worst was during family meals, sitting at the table with Marcus, seeing Dad and Mom treating him with love and respect, hearing the compliments about how he was an exemplary son. It was like living in a parallel world where the truth was upside down. Marcus has been so attentive to you, Leah, Mom would say. The other day he asked me if you were eating well, if you needed anything. I swallowed the food with difficulty, feeling nauseated hearing those words. Marcus would look at me across the table with a smile that only I could decipher. It was the smile of someone who knew they had total power over another person. April arrived bringing preparations for his wedding to Rose. The house was always full of relatives helping with the arrangements, discussing details of the celebration, choosing decorations. For everyone, it was a moment of joy. For me, it was another layer of torture. Leah will be the maid of honor, Marcus announced during a lunch. Isn't that right, little sister? The word little sister coming from his mouth gave me chills. After what he had done to me, he no longer had the right to call me that. But everyone thought the affection he showed was lovely. How sweet, exclaimed an aunt. You two are so close. Close. If she only knew what kind of closeness Marcus had forced between us. During the preparations, he took every opportunity to be alone with me and remind me of that night. Not with direct words, but with insinuations that only I understood. Leah, you'll look beautiful at the wedding. All grown up, all ladylike. He made a point of emphasizing the word ladylike, reminding me of when he said he was going to teach me to be a woman. I hope you behave well at the party, that you'll be a sister I can be proud of. The threat was implicit. If I did anything to ruin his special day, the consequences would be terrible. May brought more preparations and more opportunities for Marcus to torment me. During an afternoon when we were arranging things in the attic for his move, the unthinkable happened. He tried to repeat the violence of that first night. I missed you, he said, locking the attic door. I think you missed me too. This time I was more prepared. I had spent weeks thinking about what I would do if he tried to touch me again. I wasn't going to let him destroy me a second time. Don't touch me, I shouted, grabbing an old hammer that was in a box. If you come near me, I'll kill you. He laughed, thinking I was bluffing. You don't have the courage. Try and see. My voice came out with a strength I didn't know I had. Scream all you want. I'll say you tried to assault me. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. He realized I was no longer the frightened girl from the first time. I was willing to fight, even if I died trying. You're going crazy, Leah. Put that hammer down. I'll put it down when you open that door and leave. We stared at each other for a few seconds that seemed eternal. Him calculating if it was worth taking the risk, me prepared to break his head if necessary. Fine, he finally said, unlocking the door. But this isn't over. After the wedding, when I come back from the honeymoon, we're going to have a serious conversation. He left the attic, leaving me trembling with fear and anger. I had won that battle, but I knew the war was far from over. Marcus had made it clear that he considered having rights over me, and that the wedding wouldn't change that. It was at this time that I began to plan my escape. I could no longer live in that house. I could no longer pretend we were a normal family. After the wedding, when Marcus returned from his honeymoon, I needed to be far away from there. I started saving money in secret. I sold small things of mine, saved pennies that were left over when Mom gave me money to buy bread. borrowed money from friends with made-up excuses. It was little, very little, but it was a start. I also began researching about Atlanta, about how I would get there, where I could stay, what kind of work a 16-year-old girl could find. This was difficult information to obtain in a small town in 1968, but I was determined. Marcus's wedding was scheduled for June 15th, 1968. There were just a few weeks left, and I was sure it would be my last chance to escape. If I couldn't run away before he returned from his honeymoon, maybe I would never have the courage or opportunity again. But destiny had other plans for me, because it was precisely at this time that I met the person who would change my life forever. Miss Helena, who came to our school to replace a colleague who had retired. Miss Helena was different from all the women I knew. She was 25, single, had studied in Atlanta, and had a way of looking at people that made you feel seen and understood. She wasn't just a teacher. She was a woman who understood other women. And it was she who, on a May afternoon, called me to talk after class and asked the question that changed everything. "Leah, can I know what's happening with you? I know it's none of my business, but I'm concerned. You used to be a cheerful and communicative girl, and for the past few months, you've become a shadow of yourself." At that moment, looking into Miss Helena's kind eyes, for the first time in months, I felt that perhaps there was hope. Perhaps there was someone in the world who could help me get out of that hell. But would I have the courage to tell the truth? Would she believe me? And more importantly, would she be able to protect me from Marcus's revenge when he discovered I had spoken? I looked at Miss Helena and felt something I hadn't experienced in months, a spark of hope. But along with that hope came paralyzing fear. What if she didn't believe me? What if she thought I was making up stories about my exemplary brother? What if she told my parents? "Miss Helena, I don't know if I can talk. Leah, look at me." She held my hands delicately. "I'm not like the other people in town. I come from Atlanta. I've studied. I've seen things that people here can't even imagine exist. If you're suffering from something at home, you can trust me." There was something in her voice that reassured me. It was as if she already knew my problem was serious, as if she had experience with difficult situations. "Miss Helena, if I tell you something, do you promise you won't tell anyone without my permission?" "I promise. And more than that, I promise I'll help you in any way I can." That's when it all came out. Months of repressed suffering, of fear, of humiliation, of pain. I told her about the mistreatment, about the control, about that terrible night in March. I cried as I hadn't cried since I was a child, feeling an immense relief for finally sharing that burden with someone. Miss Helena listened in silence, without interrupting me, without judging me. When I finished speaking, she had tears in her eyes, but her face showed determination. "Leah, what your brother did to you is a terrible violence. It's a sin and a crime, even if it's inside the home, even if it's your brother." These words hit me like lightning. In 1968, in a small town, these things weren't talked about. I knew what had happened to me was terrible, but I didn't know it was a crime. "Miss Helena, but nobody will believe me. Everyone thinks Marcus is perfect. I believe you. And I'll teach you how to get evidence so that other people will believe you too." She explained that we needed to be very careful. In 1968, such an accusation could destroy my reputation instead of his. People tended to blame the woman, thinking she had provoked or made up the story. First, you need to document everything. Write in a diary all the mistreatment, with date and time. If he hurts you physically, note where and how. If possible, keep some physical evidence. "But how, Miss Helena? He's very smart." "You can be smart too, Leah. Smarter than him, because you have something he doesn't have. The desperation of someone fighting for their own life. She taught me tactics I would never have imagined on my own. How to hide a small notebook where I could write everything down. How to pretend to be asleep when he did something to scare me. How to memorize exact words he said so I could repeat them later. And another very important thing, she said, if he tries to touch you again, you scream. Scream as loud as you can, even if you're sure no one will hear. Because maybe someone will be passing by on the street, or it might wake up a neighbor." I left that conversation feeling like a different person. I was no longer the defenseless girl who only suffered in silence. I was someone with a plan, with an ally, with a real chance to change my situation. In the days that followed, I began to put into practice everything Miss Helena had taught me. I got a small notebook and hid it inside a math book that I knew Marcus would never touch. Every night, when I was sure he was asleep, I wrote everything that had happened during the day. May 28th, Marcus forbade me from going to Mary's party because he said there are rascal boys there. When I complained, he pinched my arm and said, if I disobeyed, he would lock me in my room for a week. May 30th, he ransacked my room looking for letters. He didn't find anything, but said I looked like someone who's been up to something. He pushed me against the wall and said he's keeping an eye on me. It was painful to relive each humiliation while writing, but it was also liberating. It was as if, by putting it on paper, I was taking the poison out of my body. Miss Helena also gave me precious advice on how to deal with Marcus in the days leading up to the wedding. Try not to provoke unnecessary conflicts. Be submissive enough not to arouse his anger, but not so submissive that he thinks he can do anything. It's a fine line, but you can do it. I followed her advice to the letter. When Marcus gave me orders, I obeyed without complaining. When he made malicious comments, I just lowered my head. But when he tried to touch me or make insinuations, I firmly moved away, without giving room for interpretations. The result was that he began to find me strange. You're different, Leah, he said one morning as we were having breakfast. Quieter, more controlled. I'm growing up, Marcus, learning to behave like a proper young lady. I used the very words he always repeated against himself. If he wanted a well-behaved sister, he was having a well-behaved sister, but not in the way he expected. June arrived bringing the week of the wedding. The house was always full of relatives and friends helping with the final preparations. It was the perfect time for Marcus to show everyone what a loving brother he was, and he didn't waste the opportunity. My little sister is all emotional about my wedding, he would say to visitors, putting his arm around my shoulders. She and Rose already get along very well. It will be like gaining another sister. I smiled and agreed, perfectly playing my role. But inside, I was counting the days for him to go away on his honeymoon and give me at least 2 weeks of peace. Rose was a sweet and naive girl who really believed Marcus was the perfect man everyone thought he was. During one of her visits to our house, she pulled me aside for a private conversation. Leah, I wanted to thank you for being so affectionate with me. I know sometimes it's difficult to accept a new sister-in-law. Rose, you're wonderful. Marcus is very lucky, and I'm lucky to gain a sister like you. Marcus always talks about how close you are, how he protects and takes care of you. It's beautiful to see the love he has for you. If she only knew what kind of love Marcus felt for me. But I kept the smile and continued acting. Yes, he has always been very protective. After we come back from our honeymoon, I want you to always come to our house. I want us to continue being a united family. The idea of having to live with Marcus and Rose as a couple made me nauseated, but I just nodded in agreement. 3 days before the wedding, something happened that left me terrified. Marcus called me for a sibling talk in the backyard, away from the ears of the relatives who were in the house. Leah, I want to make something very clear before I get married. My heart raced. What is it, Marcus? Don't think that because I'm going to have a wife, you can do whatever you want. Rose is my woman, but you continue to be my responsibility. And if I find out you took advantage of my absence to get into trouble, you'll pay dearly when I return. I'm not going to get into trouble. You better not. He approached me with that look I already knew well. And another thing, if you think about telling anyone about our special moments, you better rethink. Because now I have a husband's reputation to maintain, and I won't let a hysterical sister ruin that. The threat was clear. Even married, he still considered me his property, and he was willing to destroy me if I tried to free myself. That night, I wrote in my secret diary all the words he had said, trying not to forget any detail. Miss Helena had taught me that threats were also important to document. The wedding day, June 15, 1968, was torture disguised as a celebration. I had to spend the entire day smiling, greeting people, receiving compliments about how Marcus was a wonderful brother. During the ceremony in the church, when the pastor asked if anyone objected to the marriage, I had a wild desire to stand up and shout the truth. But I knew it would be crazy. Nobody would believe me. I would be seen as a jealous sister trying to ruin the wedding, and Marcus would kill me when we were alone. During the party, he made a point of dancing one song with me to show everyone what a united and loving family we were. As we danced, he whispered in my ear, "Enjoy these 15 days, little sister. When I come back, we'll have a lot of time to talk." I pretended not to understand what he meant, but my blood froze. He was planning something for when he returned from his honeymoon, and I knew it wouldn't be anything good. At the end of the night, when the newlyweds left for their honeymoon in Atlanta, I felt such great relief that I almost collapsed. 15 days. I had 15 days of freedom ahead of me, and I was determined to enjoy every second. The day after the wedding, I sought out Miss Helena to tell her about the threat Marcus had made. She was concerned, but also determined. "Leah, these 15 days are our chance. Let's use this time to strengthen our strategy and get the evidence we need." She had thought of everything. During Marcus's absence, I should look for objects of his that could serve as evidence: letters, diaries, anything that showed his true character. I should also try to talk to other girls in town to see if anyone else had gone through a similar situation. And there's one more thing, Leah. I need to teach you some self-defense techniques. If he tries to attack you again when he returns, you need to know how to protect yourself. During those blessed 15 days, my life was transformed. I woke up without fear, ate without nausea, talked to people without having to measure every word. It was as if I had left a prison and could finally breathe fresh air. I also took the opportunity to investigate Marcus's room. At the bottom of a drawer, I found a notebook where he wrote intimate thoughts. Some pages horrified me. He wrote about me in a possessive and sick way, as if I were an object of his property. "Leah is getting too pretty. I need to be careful that she doesn't draw attention from the boys in town. She is my responsibility, and she needs to learn to obey me in everything." I mentally photographed each important phrase and ran to write it all down in my secret diary. It was the proof I needed that he saw me as property, not as a sister. I also talked to some girls my age, indirectly, trying to find out if anyone else had suffered any kind of violence at home. To my surprise, I discovered that 2 school colleagues were going through similar situations. One was regularly beaten by her father, another was harassed by an uncle. "But it's normal," one of them would say. "Men are just like that. We have to endure it." That's when I understood how special Miss Helena was. She didn't think it was normal. She knew it was wrong and was willing to help me change the situation. A week before Marcus's return, Miss Helena made me a proposal that changed everything. "Leah, I've made contact with my cousin John, who is a police detective in Atlanta. He is the father of 2 daughters and always gets very upset when he hears about cases like yours." My heart accelerated. "And so, Miss Helena, he can help you make an official complaint. With all the evidence you've gathered, we have a strong case. But you need to be sure this is what you want, because once the complaint is made, there's no turning back." It was the opportunity I had been waiting for months. The chance to finally free myself from the monster who lived in my own house. But it was also terrifying. I would be destroying my family's reputation and facing Marcus's fury. "Miss Helena, I'm afraid." "I know, but sometimes we need to face fear to conquer freedom, and I'll be with you every step of the way." I looked into the eyes of that brave woman who had appeared in my life like a guardian angel. I thought about all the humiliations I had suffered, all the fears I had felt, all the nights I had cried myself to sleep. I also thought about the future, how many other girls Marcus could hurt if no one stopped him. Maybe he would have daughters one day. Maybe he would do to them what he did to me. That's when I made the bravest decision of my life. "Miss Helena, I want to make the complaint. I can't stand living in fear anymore." She smiled and held my hands. "Then let's fight together. Marcus returns in a week, and by then we'll have everything organized to end once and for all this monster who hides behind the mask of the perfect brother." That week before Marcus's return was an emotional roller coaster. During the day, I felt brave and determined, planning every detail of the complaint with Miss Helena. But at night, lying in bed, fear took over, and I wondered if I wasn't committing the biggest madness of my life. Miss Helena had organized everything down to the smallest detail. Her cousin, Detective John Santos, would come personally from Atlanta the following Saturday, 2 days after Marcus's return, to hear my testimony and formalize the complaint. We had chosen this moment strategically. Leah, it's important that he returns first and has time to do or say something that proves our complaint, she explained. If we make the complaint while he's away, it may seem like you took advantage of his absence to make up stories. The logic was perfect, but the courage I felt during the day evaporated when I thought about facing Marcus again. Would I be able to endure a few days pretending normalcy while waiting for the detective to arrive? Tuesday, June 25th, 1968. Marcus and Rose returned from their honeymoon with tanned faces and smiles that didn't leave their faces. For everyone, they were the perfect couple returning from a dream trip. For me, it was the return of my nightmare. "Leah, how we missed you," said Rose, hugging me affectionately. "Marcus talked about you every day of the trip. If she only knew the context in which he talked about me." But I kept the smile and returned the hug. "I missed you both too. How was the trip?" During the welcome dinner that Mom had prepared, Marcus behaved like the most loving brother in the world. He brought presents for everyone, an embroidered scarf for Mom, a leather wallet for Dad, and for me, a blue dress he had bought in a fancy store in Atlanta. "I tried the size based on Rose," he said, handing me the package. "I thought it would look beautiful on you." Everyone thought it was a sweet gesture from the newly married brother to remember his sister during the honeymoon. I thanked him and smiled, but inside I felt nauseated. It was like receiving a gift from someone who had violated me. That first night, when everyone went to sleep, Marcus knocked on my bedroom door. My heart almost stopped. "May I come in? I want to talk to you." "You may," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. He entered and closed the door behind him, exactly like that terrible night in March. But this time I was prepared. I had mentally rehearsed what I would do if he tried anything. "I missed you, little sister," he said, sitting on the edge of my bed. "You've grown even more in these 15 days. How was the honeymoon? Rose seems very happy." "It was enlightening." He looked at me in a strange way. It made me realize certain things about what I want from life. My blood froze. "What kind of things?" "You'll understand soon." He got up and walked to the window. "For now, I want to know how you behaved in my absence. I heard you were very quiet, hardly left the house." "There was no reason to go out. I preferred to stay helping Mom with the house." "Very good. That's how I want you to continue being, an obedient and well-behaved sister." He turned to me again. "Because now that I'm married, I have even more responsibility with our family, and I can't allow you to do anything that stains our reputation." The threat was subtle, but it was there. He had returned even more controlling, even more possessive. The wedding hadn't changed anything. On the contrary, it seemed to have worsened his thirst for dominance. "I understand, Marcus." "Great. Tomorrow we'll have more time to talk. Rose is going to visit her family, and we'll have the house just to ourselves, like in the old days." When he left the room, my hands were trembling so much that I could barely hold the pen to write down the conversation in my secret diary. Old days could only mean one thing. He was planning to violate me again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept mentally reviewing everything Miss Helena had taught me about self-defense, about how to scream to draw attention, about how to use household objects as weapons if necessary. The next morning, Wednesday, Rose left early to visit her parents, as Marcus had predicted. Dad and Mom went to work normally. We were left alone in the house for the first time since he had returned. During breakfast, he was strangely silent, observing me with that look I already knew well. It was the look of a predator, studying its prey. "Leah, after you finish washing the dishes, I want you to come to my room. I need to show you some things I brought from the trip." My stomach turned. "What kind of things?" "You'll see." He got up from the table, passed behind my chair, and put his hands on my shoulders. "They are educational things." I washed the dishes with trembling hands, knowing that when I finished, I would have to face whatever he was planning. But this time, it was different. This time, I knew that in 2 days the detective would come, and all of this would end. When I went up to his room, I found Marcus sitting on the bed with some photographs spread out beside him. Photographs of half-naked women that he had secretly bought in Atlanta. "Sit here beside me," he said, patting the bed. I want to teach you some things I learned on my honeymoon. Marcus, I don't want to see those photos. I'm not asking for your opinion. His voice changed immediately, becoming hard and threatening. I'm giving an order. Sit here now. That's when something happened that changed everything. Instead of obeying as I always did, instead of cowering in fear, I felt such great anger that it exploded inside me like a volcano. No! I screamed with a strength that came from the depths of my soul. I will not sit. I will no longer obey you. Marcus was so surprised by my reaction that for a few seconds he couldn't speak. He was used to the submissive and fearful Leah. This brave and loud Leah was new to him. What did you say? He asked, slowly getting up from the bed. I said no. I will no longer accept you treating me like your object. I will no longer pretend that we are normal siblings. Have you gone crazy? Lower your voice before the neighbors hear. Let them hear. Let everyone hear what you did to me. You hurt me in a horrible way. You abused me. The words came out of my mouth like cannonballs. It was the first time I had spoken openly about it, and the effect was devastating. Marcus turned as white as a sheet. Shut up! You don't know what you're saying. Yes, I do. I know very well. You raped me in March. You beat me. You humiliated me, and I have evidence. That's when he completely lost control. He came at me with a fury I had never seen before, trying to hit me to silence me. But this time, I was prepared. I dodged the first punch and ran to the dresser, where I grabbed a cast-iron paperweight that Dad had given him years ago. When Marcus came toward me again, I hit him on the head, leaving him dazed. Help! Help! He's trying to hit me! I screamed as loud as I could, even knowing there was probably no one to hear me. Marcus held his head, which was bleeding, and looked at me with a pure hatred that gave me chills. You're going to pay for this, you little tramp. You're going to pay dearly. I'm not going to pay anything. You're the one who's going to pay. The police are coming to get you. It was a lie. The detective wouldn't arrive until Saturday. But I wanted to scare him. I wanted him to know that his days of terror were over. What police? You're bluffing. Miss Helena helped me. She called a detective from Atlanta. I have everything documented. All the times you hit me, all the humiliations, everything. Now it was his turn to be terrified. I realized I had hit the nail on the head. He knew that if the police had evidence, his facade of perfect brother would no longer help. What documentation? Where is this evidence? You'll never know, but it's safe. And if you lay a finger on me again, tomorrow I'll hand everything over to the police. Marcus stood in the middle of the room, with blood dripping from his forehead, processing what I had just said. For the first time in my life, he was afraid of me. Leah, let's talk calmly. You're confusing things. I'm not confusing anything. I know very well what you did to me, and now everyone will know too. I left his room running and locked myself in my own room, trembling with adrenaline and fear. I had burned my bridges. There was no turning back. It was declared war between us, and one of us would come out destroyed from that battle. For the rest of the day, Marcus stayed in his room, probably planning his next move. When Rose returned from her parents' house, he made up an excuse about having fallen and hit his head to explain the wound. What a scare, my love. Are you sure you don't need to go to the doctor? No, it was nothing. It's already better. During dinner, he would look at me sideways, trying to decipher if I really had the evidence I had mentioned. I maintained the most serious face possible, as if I were the owner of secrets that could destroy him. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I knew I had provoked the beast, and now it was wounded and furious. The next few days would be crucial. I needed to hold firm until Detective John Santos arrived. Thursday dawned tense. Marcus tried various approaches to discover where my evidence was. Sometimes he tried to be affectionate and persuasive, sometimes threatening and intimidating. But I didn't yield an inch. Leah, you know I'm your brother, right? That I've always taken care of you? Sometimes we disagree, but deep down, we love each other. I know exactly who you are, Marcus, and I know exactly what you did. All right. But tell me one thing. Where did you hide these papers you said you have? That's something you'll never know. It was an intense psychological game. Him trying to break me trying to resist. But I had an advantage he didn't know about. I was sure I was on the right side, and that gave me a strength he couldn't understand. Friday was even more tense. Marcus realized he couldn't intimidate me into revealing where the evidence was, so he changed strategy. He began to plan how to discredit my version when the time came. You know, Leah, if you really made some complaint against me, it will be very sad for our parents to discover they have a lying and ungrateful daughter. They'll discover they have a son who raped me. Nobody will believe you. I'm a married man, respected, who dedicated his life to taking care of the family. You're a problematic teenager who is making up stories to get attention. His words hurt me because I knew there was a grain of truth in them. It really would be difficult to convince people. But Miss Helena had prepared me for this. Maybe. But let's see what happens when the authorities examine the evidence. Saturday, June 29th, 1968. The day of truth had arrived. Miss Helena met me in the church plaza after the morning service, as we had arranged. She was accompanied by a tall man of about 45, with graying hair, a serious demeanor, but a kind look. Leah, this is my cousin, Detective John Santos. He came especially from Atlanta to hear your story. My heart was beating so hard, it felt like it would come out of my mouth. After months planning that moment, it had finally arrived. Young lady, said the detective with a firm but gentle voice, my cousin has told me a little about your situation. I know it must be very difficult to talk about this, but I need to hear your complete version of the facts. I'm afraid. I know you are, but that's exactly why I'm here, to ensure you are protected and that justice is done. I have 2 daughters your age, and I get outraged when I hear about cases like this. We went to Miss Helena's house, where I spent the next 3 hours telling everything. Every detail, every humiliation, every aggression. Detective John Santos noted everything meticulously, asking specific questions that showed his experience. When I showed him my secret diary with all the records, I saw in his eyes the confirmation that we had a solid case. Leah, these notes are very detailed and consistent. Along with your testimony, we have enough material for a formal complaint. And now, what will happen? Now, we're going to your house, and we're going to confront your brother. If everything you told me is confirmed by the evidence, he will be arrested today. This was it. The moment I had dreamed of and feared at the same time had arrived. In a few hours, my life would change forever. And Marcus's too. As we walked to my house, I thought about Dad and Mom. How would they react to discovering that their exemplary son was a monster? How would they deal with the destruction of the perfect family image we had built? But I couldn't think about that anymore. I had come too far to back down now. It was time to face the monster once and for all. When we arrived at the house, we found Marcus on the porch talking with some neighbors about plans for the new house he intended to build. When he saw me arriving accompanied by Miss Helena and an unknown man, his face completely changed. Leah, who are these people? Detective John Santos introduced himself with authority. I am Detective John Santos from the Atlanta Police Department. I need to speak with Mr. Marcus Newman about some serious accusations that have been made against him. The world stopped. The neighbors looked at each other without understanding anything. Marcus turned as white as paper, but tried to maintain his composure. Accusations? What kind of accusations? Better we talk in private. Can you accompany us? We entered the house, and Dad and Mom were called. What followed was the most difficult scene of my life. Seeing the shock on my parents' faces when the detective explained the reason for the visit was devastating. "This is absurd," shouted Marcus. "My sister is making up stories. She has always been problematic, always seeking attention." But when the detective showed my diary with all the detailed notes, when he read aloud some of the phrases Marcus had written in his own notebook, when he confronted the dates and times, his defense began to crumble. Dad cried in silence. Mom repeated, "It's not possible, it's not possible," like a desperate prayer. Rose, who had arrived in the middle of the confusion, was in a state of total shock. The decisive moment was when the detective asked to examine Marcus's room. There he found not only the notebook I had seen, but also other mementos he kept of me. A lock of my hair, a photo of me sleeping that he had taken in secret, letters I had written to friends and that he had intercepted. "Marcus Newman," said the detective with a firm voice, "you are under arrest for the crimes of domestic violence, abuse, and threats against a minor." When the handcuffs clicked on his wrists, I felt such great relief that I collapsed in tears. They weren't tears of sadness, but of liberation. After more than a year living in hell, I was finally free. Marcus was tried 6 months later. With all the evidence we had gathered, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Rose asked for an annulment of the marriage, and our family was never the same. Dad and Mom needed a lot of time to process what had happened. In the beginning, there were moments of denial, of guilt, of shame, but gradually they understood that I was the victim, not the culprit. Miss Helena became much more than a teacher. She became my second mother, my great friend, my savior. Without her, I would never have found the courage to denounce Marcus. Today, at 72 years old, I can say that that decision to confront my abuser was the most important of my life. It wasn't easy. I had to go through therapy for years, rebuild my self-esteem, learn to trust people again. But I succeeded. I got married at 23 to a wonderful man who respected me from day one. We had 3 beautiful children, whom we raised with love and without violence. I became a teacher like my savior Helena, and for 40 years I helped other girls who were going through similar situations. Marcus served his sentence and left prison in 1973. He tried to reconnect with the family, but I made it clear that there was no possible forgiveness. He moved to another state, and we never had contact again. The lesson I want to leave you with is, never accept violence, no matter who it comes from. It doesn't matter if it's a father, brother, husband, boyfriend. Violence is not love. It's not care. It's not protection. It's a crime. If you or someone you know is going through a similar situation, report it. Seek help. Talk to teachers, police officers, social workers. Don't stay alone in this fight. And always remember, you are not to blame for anything. The only guilty one is the person who commits the violence. Dear folks, if this story touched you in any way, please leave a like on this video and subscribe to our girls channel. You don't know how much it gives me strength to continue sharing these difficult memories, but ones that can help other people. Because life teaches us that there is always a way out. There is always hope. Sometimes it comes disguised as a brave teacher, sometimes as a dedicated detective, sometimes from our own inner strength that we didn't even know existed. Thank you for accompanying me on this painful but necessary journey. Until the next story, and remember, you are stronger than you imagine.